We've obviously got people online, but at the moment, as I'm counting it, we look as if we've got 7 governors. What that means is we're not 4 governors for making a decision. So if that remains the case, then when we come to the reappointment for Gary, we'd have to do that a different way, noted, but we can't actually approve that. But online, we've also got Andy and Tom. I'm just looking to make sure we've got Precious with Joe and Kate are there. That's everybody online. And then never been in the room. We haven't got any of our new governors, so they have the same politics. So there isn't anybody new that I'm introducing to anybody, I think, at this point of the thing. So we'll formally then into the agenda. We're all happy. So welcome to the Governors' meeting for January. Nearly at the end of January, which everybody keeps talking about online in the very, very long months. But the days are getting lighter, earlier or later, which is right, later, earlier, yes, they're getting it. So we'll take apologies, which we've got a list of apologies from, so we've got apologies from Amechi, apologies from Andrea. She was doing a lot of logistics to try to get another meeting. We've got apologies from William and from Ian and from Adam and from Harry and from David. That's a good thing. There's a space you might be. And then we've got apologies from Danish. But apologies in the exec. Catherine, she's on holiday, and from Fiona, she came last night for Fiona, she came last time, and she'll come again. I thought Helen and Jonathan are attending, but I think they're coming. Jonathan's going to come soon. I think they're coming. They're just not here just yet, so that's fine. By the time we get to those updates, they should be with us. And I think, and Gary's on holiday too, so Gary as well. That's fine. So I will take any declarations of interest. There was anything in the and I think we're all going to welcome the new governors at the next meeting. We had 3 new governors join us, which is lovely. I'll therefore take the minutes of the meeting.
Heidi.
Yes, Joe, sorry.
Sorry. Kate's just got her hand up, I think.
It was just a note. I think those who've got Meet Geek embedded in their calendar, it automatically joins meetings and note takes unless you turn it off. So I think on my screen it's probably hard to see in the room, but there's a member, one of our non-execs who's got Meet Geek on their calendar, so it's recording and note taking the meeting, and so. I don't know, Heidi, if we just let it run, because I'm not sure we can turn it off, whether it can be removed from the meeting with the administration team.
Yeah, so the calendar can be turned off. So in the Amanda, I think, can turn it off. We did that the other day when we were on the governors meeting where it was running. So I think we can do that. Or if the individual. Precious, have you got Meet Geek on? I know it sometimes runs on your calendar. Don't want to point the finger at you. You might say you haven't, but I know you well enough that I can just ask you. Yeah, so it's optimised. Yes. So if we could take Precious out, I'm just going to check Precious one more time that you're not actually on the meeting. Yeah. So we could, if we could take Precious out of the meeting, Amanda, if you know how to do that, that would be good. They're not going to use Meet Geek. Meet Geek, yes, that removes that from the meeting. Thank you, Kate. So I can't see that from here on the screen in the room. So the minutes of the previous meeting in October, are there any comments anybody wants to make, both accuracy and content? I'll take it together.
It was just all in a section where I decided to help the first HT instead of MT.
That's it. Anything else with me on those? Well, that's a comprehensive set of minutes of what happened at the meeting, so that's good. And then there isn't an action log. There wasn't anything that we picked up. I don't know whether it's missing as an action. And the only thing I was going to say to myself about the actions was as we go through, we might just kind of make sure we issue it. I don't want to break jobs and we get enough actions from board meetings and seminars and other matters, but we just want to make sure we don't pick something up as an action and we actually find out. I think that's okay for us to to make sure we capture that. So that's very good luck. So my update, obviously is in the pack. I was only going to make a couple of other comments. I was just going to say, I'm sure the governors, Council of Governors would like to say thank you too, but I want to acknowledge to the governors how busy we've been as a site over the last 3 or 4 weeks, but I think due to some of the activity, and I was just talking with Faye earlier about this, probably with the activity that we've been driving through the year, joking about this when it comes to his update, but I think the team have worked really hard together over the last 3 or 4 weeks, up to Christmas, through New Year, and into January. It has been busy, and we've had days when we have been busy, and I've already over 4. But I think the team, it's had that sense of grabbing hold of the issues and the matters very quickly, and then so I'm sure I back up my Council of Governors meeting to everybody and trust for the work that they do. I was also going to just thank everyone, few people who haven't been here. I was also going to congratulate Maxine on her NHS providers blog. She did, which I thought I did go and read it. And yes, I thought it was very nice and a very nice update. And I kind of think it's a very positive way of putting forward why someone chooses to be a governor and very positive and what's very busy stuff going on in life. I thought it went really, really well in terms of being a governor and good governor. Really sounds like but I was going to just add that to it. And the end of the thing I was going to add was that I went to an East Region meeting today online, an East Region meeting talking about some of the way forward. They're going to kind of regulate it going forward and work together going forward. Dry meeting, to say, dry, but good to kind of hear all the questions that they ask and what they're talking about. And I think it's tricky, made me think that about getting in touch with the government of NHS England. Interested in hearing a bit more from that about how some of this is going to actually flow out into action. So that happened today. So I'm happy to take any questions from my report or anything I've said. Think from anyone. Thank you very much. On things as we go through. So that's great. I'm going to hand over to Joe, who's on screen for his update.
Thank you very much, Heidi. Just check that everybody can hear me okay in the room.
I hear you very well.
Good, good. So obviously the main news is around getting confirmation of funding for the new hospital, which we're clearly delighted about. Those of you that have gone into detail about the government's announcement, it's very clear that we are one of 3 organisations that were actually given additional monies over and above those hospitals that have got concrete rot in them. So I think it's a fantastic news for Milton Keynes and for the hospital itself. What we are now doing is going through a detailed piece of work to set out all of the planning milestones. This is clearly such a significant amount of money that everything needs Treasury approval. So we're expecting the planning to take at least a couple of years and then the build to take at least a couple of years. Because don't forget, this is about getting drawings of where every single plug socket and light switch and all the rest of it goes on a 7-story building. So it's a huge undertaking. And as I said to the exec team the other day, this is where the really hard work starts for all of us. And a big thanks to the new hospital team who have got us this far already. So lots of work to do, lots of focus on it. And I think our key sort of driver at this stage is making sure that we get all of our clinical teams involved and all of those professional services that need to be involved to make the hospital a success. And if you think about some of the key factors here, obviously the new hospital is designed to have single rooms, and the current, as an example of some of the work that we've got to do, our current nursing structure is designed to look after 4 and 6 bedded bays. So very, very different model of care potentially, and very challenging about how we do that. So lots of work to be done, but let's not detract from the fantastic news that is. I'm not going to go through each of the different parts of the report, but the second thing I just wanted to build on what Heidi was saying. We have had a very, very busy Christmas period. I still find it quite bizarre that only around about a third of our population actually went and got the flu vaccine. We've seen significant numbers of patients come into our hospital with flu. Numbers of COVID patients with COVID has been fairly light this year, thankfully, but unfortunately, it doesn't take much these days in any organisation to make us completely full. We have had a couple of occasions whereby we've gone into a sort of internal incident because we have been completely full, but we have not had to do what so many hospitals across the NHS have had to do, which is call a full major incident. We've not done that. The team, as always at MKUH, have done a really good job of keeping our patients safe and doing the best that we possibly can to make sure that we don't cancel elective patients. I'm sure when we get to performance, Helen will update somewhat on what's been happening on the performance side. So I'll take the rest of the report as read, if I may, Heidi, and take any questions as helpful.
What were the rates of RSV and infections in children? So we noticed quite a lot of social media chatter about children coming into the hospital and experiences around diagnosis with RSV, and it struck me that I wondered what the vaccination rates around that were this year.
We know the vaccination rates across all of the winter infections were down this year nationally and also in Milton Keynes. I haven't got specifics on RSV. I can get hold of them, I'm certain. So leave that one with me. I'll take that away as an action.
Andy, you've got a question.
Yeah, great news about the funding. When the hospital is built, how many beds or what changes will that bring to the hospital we've got? Will it increase beds, etc.? And what's the process there?
Thanks for that, Andy. We will do a detailed briefing to the Council of Governors as soon as we've got that timeline sorted out. But at the very macro scale, the best way of thinking about it is that it adds approximately a third more clinical space to the clinical space that we've got at the moment.
Right.
So from a development perspective and ensuring that we've got an acute hospital that's fit for purpose as our population grows, it really does sort us out for the next 20 years minimum.
Fantastic.
So yes, anybody else got any questions? Joe, is your opportunity for Chief Executive put him on the spot? Find out all those things. Okay, my friend's giggling at that joke. Nothing else we want to ask. Wow, it's not to do with the report. Yeah, it'll be something I do when we budget votes. Yeah, no. Joe, the Radiotherapy Centre, I'll let you answer that. It's when is it opening? So rather than me answering it, I'll let you answer it.
Fine. So thank you for that. The Radiotherapy Centre received its first patient on Monday, being looked after by OUH, Oxford University Hospitals. We have still got a fairly significant amount of work going on to get the centre back up to the gold standard that we had it at before the water leak. So, for example, our CT planning machine is not working because of water ingress due to the leak. I am pleased to say that we've had a long relationship with our building contractor, who within 24 hours had accepted responsibility for the issue without any concerns. So their insurance will and is sorting everything out, but we're just not quite there yet to be able to run full services.
Any other questions from governors? Joe? Lovely, thank you very much, Joe. We're going to have Helen's update as part of Joe's, but Helen's not joined us yet. So I shall,
She did say she might be able to.
yeah, she's been good, so that's fine. So I think what we'll do is keep going. It would be good for Helen to talk to her pieces, really, I think. I'm just going to welcome to the meeting. Oh, Joe, stand up. Sorry. You're going to ask yourself a question.
As much as I would love to talk to myself, I think others may get bored very quickly. It's just the sound coming from the room, it can get quite garbled.
Okay.
And so I just wonder if it's possible, and I know it's painful, if people can enunciate as best as possible and speak slowly so that we can pick up as much sound as we can.
Do our very best. I wonder part of it is letting the camera turn. You know, so when you start speaking, the camera turns to you. Maybe that's the means then it picks up the sound. So we'll try to make sure we're doing that.
That's perfect. I know it's painful to speak like that, and for everybody's benefit, we are looking to significantly improve the sound quality in the room because we know it's a problem. So we are on the case. So apologies for interrupting.
See, that's what happens, governors, when chief executives at the receiving end of the sound, it gets fixed. So I suppose that's one way of coming at things. Everyone's doing thumbs up at that, so it's everyone's more than happy, but that's the solution. I will just welcome David and Claire to the meeting, just so we've said hello to David and Claire, and that means I think we're at 9 governors, so we're almost there. We're almost there, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. Lovely, Joe. Thank you very much for the update and people for their questions. And I'm going to hand to Babs.
Hello. Excellent. So my update will be fairly short because I have another item later on in the agenda. So basically, I want to say, well, great to see all of you. It's really, really nice to be back on site. I echo Heidi in thanking everyone hospital for their patient needs and basically keeping patients safe during these very challenging times. Now, my tiny update harks back to before Christmas, which seems like a lifetime ago, and just raised just how pleasant it was at the governor get together following the ward visits. I understand that the ward visits were very successful, as well as the distribution of the small gifts amongst the patients in the wards. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the round for the gifting, but surprise, I was there for the food. So, but I obviously hope that we can have more of these type of events, maybe quarterly. It was very, very lovely camaraderie, and obviously, hopefully, in the future, have a mix of NEDs as well. Yes. Thank you.
That's very nice. And we were very good.
We were very well
stayed on
behaved.
social topic.
We stayed on topic. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Babs. Any questions for Babs? That's super. Thank you very much. Okay, so we can move on to the line. Oh, I'm so sorry, Christine. No, sorry.
The engagement, the governor's engagement committee, we have terms of reference, and we were some time ago were asked to volunteer. What's the action? Where are we with that?
To that. Okay, thank you very much. We've actually developed the terms of reference and shared with members, and I'm sure some of the governors have that the terms of reference in your own right now. Haven't had any responses. We're hoping to start formally in the new financial year. So right now, what we're doing is all the housekeeping required to establish the committee properly. So we still have some time to respond to the terms of reference. If everyone is happy with it, then we'll develop what's called a forward look, just like we have for the non-executive appointment committee and the council of governors. So we develop that using the normal engagement report that goes to the engagement board. So that's what Louis and I are working on right now. So once we're done, the first meeting will be in April in the new financial year, because right now the engagement board is still active.
So do we know who are members of that committee?
Yes, I've actually sent an email. I'm going to resend the email to everyone. Yeah. Well, we had a lot of people volunteer for it.
We'll
So,
send it, should we send it out?
yes,
Would that help
yeah,
you again?
I'm going to send it again.
It's probably gone in the Christmas, New Year.
I've seen the terms of reference.
Yeah, oh, thank you.
I'll send it.
And if anybody's got the terms of reference, it might be helpful if people, even if people are thinking, yes, they're fine, if you just say back, yes, they're fine, and then that, too, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you very much, perhaps. Thank you. I'm going to hand over for the finance. Jonathan.
Thank you, Heidi.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. So the payment you've got in the pack is relatively dated now. It goes back to the position as of November. So I'm not going to go through all of that here. We're happy to take questions on it. What you can see there, those story whereby back in November, we had a 3.9 million adverse position year to date. Although we're starting to see some small surpluses in fund. So I think the story which I explained in previous periods still largely stands. We are overperforming in terms of the level of activity we're doing, which is driving resellers' income, but lost as well as a premium. So the narrative remains relatively consistent there. Effectively, we've got three main drivers behind our challenges in terms of our financial position: cost of delivery, cost capacity, their awards, which we're also debating with Energies England in regards to the full funding of, and increasingly since November, the cost of escalation capacity, which we talked about earlier in this meeting. So it hasn't got materially easier since this paper. We are making good progress on our COPs. We're on track to deliver somewhere in the region of £20 million this year. We may be slightly off our targets, but nonetheless, this is the biggest number we've delivered in real terms for a number of years. So really good progress against the planning process for that from 2026 at the moment. A couple of things haven't changed since we last spoke. Emergency is something that we're meeting today. So we have been on some for the electric recovery funding payments regime. Now this year, which means effectively you get paid for the expected procedure or that you have. What is changing with that from Q4 this year and next year is effectively systems where we fund their lump sum of money, fund that activity capacity. So that does put increased risk into the system around what we can deliver. We will wait for the planning guidance for next year tomorrow. It's been long delayed. Hopefully it will arrive and we'll find out clearly what our envelopes are and actually what we are required to deliver there. So we need to see that, but I think it's be clear to bring thus far that the challenges with regards to the performance requirements in the centre as compared to the money we've put forward over the next period. So no doubt we'll update further on that in future meetings, but always taking questions.
Very simple question. RTT, I didn't see it in the glossary. What is it?
Is the referral to treatment time? So it's the 18-week standard for that.
Okay, thank you.
The conversations are happening and girls are talking about how London is going to be difficult. I mean, I think the team, we updated here, Gary updated, I think, at the last meeting for the governance, so I think we will continue to make sure that finance committee update wherever this is obviously talked about in depth. I'm trying to understand both the year-end position, but also we're going to be setting ourselves up for 2026 and beyond. But I think it'll help governments to hear the updates from Gary as he does them throughout the year. In terms of their detail and the way he shares it. Yeah. Thank you very much, Jonathan. If you've got no question from you, that's good. I think we can move now to, so we're still waiting for Helen to join us. I think we'll move to the capital programme update, which I think you're doing, Joe.
I am. Excuse me. I am. So first thing to say is that Oak Ward is coming in as expected. And for those of you that have been on site, you will see the building works going on outside Oak House. That's delighted to say that we've broken ground and the building is starting to go up now. So that's huge progress. If members, if council recall, Oak wards are designed to enable us to have inpatient capacity until the new hospital is built. So we've planned for a number of years until the new hospital is open. So just to give you that assurance. Secondly, the multi-storey car park is going well, and that is due to open in June time as expected. And I'm delighted to say that the high voltage cable, I know this keeps all of our councillor governors awake at night thinking about electricity and how we are going to power our new hospital. I'm delighted to say that that is helpfully now the funding for that has been confirmed for next year, and expectation is that that will go to plan next year. Final big scheme that I want to bring to people's attention is the diagnostics centre, which is again, the demolition work has been completed and we're just starting to see some proper groundworks taking place there. For those of you who recall me say previously, you can't be a modern major acute hospital without having a really high-powered new diagnostic centre, which we are putting in the heart of our hospital. So that is coming along well now. So I'll sort of pause there if I may, Heidi, and take any questions on any of the other developments.
Awesome. Sorry, I'll go for Andy first. Does it go enough? I think you're on mute, Andy.
Sorry about that. Yeah, what sort of money do we pay annually on things like gas and electricity as a whole?
I have a sports question. I'm looking forward to Jonathan answering this question. What I do know is that our investment in, I'm buying him time to look it up in the accounts. What I do know is that over the last 5 years or so, we've put over 4,000 solar panels on our roofs, which on a good day generates up to about 15% of our electricity usage in the hospital. And when we put it in, those panels had a payback period of around about 22 years. That payback period now is between 7 and 8 years. So it really has been a fantastic investment. If Jonathan hasn't been able to find the number directly by now, I can't really filibuster any longer. And I'll say, Andy,
when I come back to you, it's in the tens of millions. I think it probably is fair to say we are experiencing some significant pressures, so we've absorbed those pressures over the last 2 years, and the flags for next year are again big. Although as Joe says, obviously we get again some of that looks so I have to come back with the numbers first meeting. I couldn't find it.
Did you have your hand up? I did. Is it okay to ask a question? I'll answer the question. We'll see what we can answer.
I just wondered, with the extra capacity that we're developing in terms of the estate, what's the mechanism and how responsive is it for developing workforce to staff those facilities?
So I think that will be part of the other thing as part of the timeline when we talk to governments about the new hospital.
Just a general question, really.
Yes, I think that will come a lot of powerful so over the next, what the next 2 to 4 years looks like. First of all, building kind of what the structure of the hospital looks like, what the take what the services look like. There was Joe earlier about the different model of staffing. It's going to be a different single on the rooms or a competition. Joe, I think it's going to come in.
I would just give a really practical example of what you said there. We have currently 11 delivery suites in our maternity unit. When we move into the hospital, new hospital, there are 16 delivery suites. We're not going to open 5 of them unless we have berths available and mums to be queuing up to use them. So our expectation is, as I said, the new hospital keeps going for sort of 20 plus years. We are not going to need the numbers of staff to staff fully a new hospital on day one, and that's all of the hard work that goes on between now and then. For one thing, if you think it'll cost us around about 150 million to fully run the new hospital, I don't think we'll get a check for 150 million extra revenue on year one. So we've got to be really, really careful about our staffing models, and that's what we're working on now.
And I think I've really got a point I was going to make, Joe. Whereas with the high voltage, that's obviously our most exciting piece that we want to talk about with the governors. If National Grid have had a problem, I guess over the next few months, if they're 11 months behind pace, that kind of thing is then suddenly, with a new hospital in train, that suddenly becomes more important, doesn't it? That people like National Grid can actually come to site at some point and do what we require them to. It's like the usual thing when you're building things, you always have to look out for BT because they have the longest lead time of everything you ever want to do when you're building shops or building centres, which is quite ridiculous normally. But I suppose at that point, these are the things that are going to suddenly start to become real as part of planning that we're doing and actions. Whereas, to date, it's it's not happening because, but there'll come a point where many more things start to bite you. Any other questions? It is very so I still don't have Helen. I'm not sure it's really. I'm Joe.
I'm happy to take it.
It won't be as good, obviously, as it is. But as long as we all go into this item knowing that, Joe is very kindly going to do an operational update. That'd be really helpful, Joe. Thank you.
So if again, the apologies, the sound quality is struggling, but I think the first thing to say is that our position as a hospital continues to improve. That is the headline message. I hesitate because I don't want to sound like a politician. So let me give you a couple of proper facts over the last sort of few weeks, because what we've seen as an NHS is significant numbers of hospitals cancelling and stopping elective activity whilst we have continued. So at the end of December, we had roughly 200 patients waiting more than 65 weeks. That has come down slightly. And by slightly, at the end of last week, we're at 190. What's happened in the east of England and nationally is over that 2-week period, 2 weeks ago, there were 2,000 patients in the east of England waiting over 65 weeks. We made up in Milton Keynes, we made up about 11% of the total number of over 65-week waiters. At the end of last week, we made up 6% of the total numbers. So our proportion had dropped hugely, nearly halved, but actually the number of patients, which is an important number in all of this, the number of patients had only dropped by 10. What had happened is that across the whole of east of England, the number of patients waiting over 65 weeks had gone up from 2,000 to 2,800 in a 2-week period. So we've seen a lot of organisations effectively stop operating on long waiting patients, and we have continued not always at the pace that we would wish. We plan by the end of March with best efforts and usual sort of caveats of all other things being equal, blah, 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 to get to around about 30 to 40 patients over 65 weeks. We'll do everything that we can to reduce that further, but then you get the operational issues that hit you. We've lost an elective theatre because our air conditioning in that theatre has gone down. So we're not making as fast progress as we would like, but we're getting there. If you then look at the number of patients that are being treated within 18 weeks, which is the referral to treatment time, We started when we were reported in the press. We started with a figure of around about 38%. So roughly 1 in 3 patients were being treated within 18 weeks, and we were the worst in the country. What we've seen in the last 2 months is that we've seen that position improve to the point now whereby around about 43% of our patients are being treated within 18 weeks. So a decent step up, nothing to celebrate at all, and we're now the 4th worst in the country. Nothing to celebrate at all. What we know is that we are making steady, sensible progress despite it being winter. We'll continue with that steady, sensible progress. What we don't yet know is exactly what funding is going to be available for next year yet. And if you think that if we're the 4th worst in the country now, you would imagine that we would get a little bit of extra money to treat the big numbers of patients who need to be treated compared to those organisations that are up at the 70, 80%. We don't yet know whether that's going to be the case. So we are, usual story, we will plan and we will see what comes out when we get the bottom line financial numbers, and we will come back and say this is what we expect to be able to achieve with that funding. So I hope that makes sense, Heidi. It wouldn't have been as eloquent as Helen could have described things, but hopefully that gives you a sense of where we're at.
And I think I'll add to that one thing, Joe, which is I think that it's recognised that we're making, whether that's at ICB level or region, it is recognised, isn't it, that we have made steps from end of spring, summertime, both on 65 weeks, 78 weeks, 104 weeks, but also towards understanding that that journey needs to keep happening. And I think in contrast perhaps to other areas where that's rising, I think it's definitely been recognised, hasn't it, Joe, that we are making steady, we're doing what we said we'd do.
Absolutely right. And in fact, Helen and I had a meeting with the regional and national team yesterday, and they said that they would take us out of what they're called tier 4, which is additional scrutiny. They would have taken us out of that had the goalposts not been changing from April onwards, and we're moving to this looking at referral to treatment time. So they recognise the progress that we're making. They recognise that we are doing what we said we were going to do. And probably as importantly, they recognise that there are a number of organisations that are going backwards whilst we go forwards.
Is there anything anyone wants to Joe, around performance? Or from what he's raised? No.
Right. Let's go and ask, in terms of communicating to people in constituencies, are there any sort of good examples, kind of practical examples of what the hospital is doing to improve its performance, that we can kind of give to people who are asking or talking about, waiting times and things like that we can tell people that are easy to sort of digest exactly.
So this is where it gets really, really tricky. So absolutely the right question to ask. If I said to you that we're in a position whereby if you get referred to us for dermatology, so any of the skin conditions, you're likely to wait just a few weeks. If you get referred to us for urology, then the likelihood is that if you require an operation, you're going to be waiting upwards of 65 weeks. So to be able to give our citizens a consistent message is really challenging, because there is such a divergence in waiting times across different specialties. I know that's not a helpful answer.
I think, thank you, that's helpful. Yeah, I think it's going to help that in terms of understanding on what someone's asking. So that would be part of the answer. Thank you very much, Joe. So I think at this point I am going to take myself out of the room and let you move on to the. If you're looking at this, if I'm saying the wrong thing,
really not going to say a few things.
Do you want to do the Gary part first?
Yes, so
We'll do the Gary part
Yes.
first. Fine.
So in my report, you see that it's arranged so that we discuss the reappointment of Marvin and then the appraisal updates. Now the Ned Appointment Committee met very recently on the 22nd, and there we received information through the reports and discussion with regards to these first two topics. I thought it would be quite interesting, especially as we have other Neds and execs here, just to have a sort of a summary of the information you gave us in regards to Gary, and maybe anybody else chimes in, and then this will be noted for approval later on.
Yes, so we.
Could I just jump in? I don't think it's appropriate. I might be wrong on this, that the execs are here.
Oh, I'm not.
I don't think the execs should be part of any conversation about the appointment of.
It's just a report.
I think it's just the report. The appointment has already come from the appointment committee, so it's already done. It's coming here just for approval. So I don't think that is matters. I think if you wish to step away, Joe, that's not a problem. They've got things coming up, so if you wish to, that's absolutely fine. But I think it's all right. It's going to be a very brief comment.
So this is just a summary report coming from the lead governor on the meeting of the Ned Appointments Committee.
So
Yeah.
the recruitment essentially has been done.
And the recommendation.
Yeah.
So therefore the executive can't be accused of influence.
No. There was a fuller report which is not going to be gone into detail.
Yeah, I was only going to update to say that there is a process in place for the Neds. Myself and Mark, I think he's really enjoying. We go through a process of doing appraisals.
Being in there, we're going through a process.
Going through the process of appraisal. We do appraisal, we have to sit down and have a conversation. We kind of look to seek out what happened during the year. But my main focus on it is, as when I do proposals with anyone, and indeed with Joe, is really to sort of have that conversation. That's the important bit. And to talk about what's coming up in the year, like what we can learn from the year that went by, and what we've got to learn from the year that went. And I think that's the most important part going into this conversation, is that we're having a real, honest, authentic conversation from surrounding the issues, etc., of the NHS, which are things that are important. But I think it's the process of having a conversation and engaging with someone, having as an exec, saying about what we're doing in the year, and actually it's something real rather than just it's a sort of process that fills in forms. It takes the
So it's like getting value out.
yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
I just challenge to make that happen.
Yes, I think I said to Kenny, I don't think in the process, it just is filling in the forms and doing the process for the sake of it. I want us to come out with something where we're agreeing with each other and we understand what's going to happen going on. So Gary's appraisal has been done. I supportive of Gary in the second term into the appointments committee. Perhaps we'll be tabling that for approval.
So a typo on page 36 said the committee noted the appraisal of Gary and recommends him for re-invite to council governors. I think forward.
No, the council documents, no, not to the board, it's recommendation to the council of governments.
It's here that does
It's
it.
here that does it.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, it's
Okay.
a reading of it. I know, yes.
Yeah. It's on single.
Thank you, Heidi. So the only thing I was going to add is that the panel took into account the basically the appraisal that we carried out, Gary, and from the information given in terms of his approach in the chairing the committees, and also the moves that he's made in terms of making the audit committee look more into short-term risks, and all those different changes that has brought and made him a valuable asset to the Neds group. lends itself to us making it or accepting that we should bring this forward and ask that the council approve the reappointment. But obviously, because we're not Corners, we can't do that. So that would be done. But it's a thing. Yeah, so that's that part. If I then move on to the phrase or updates, and I'm not sure if Heidi will be able to add anything to this in terms of as I understand that in terms of the appraisal updates for the non-execs, the committee looks at how the succession planning is going to be made more effective in terms of leadership, development, and the things that we could place new members into and training that could be offered to them in order for them to step up into main positions such as chairing committees in the future. But is there anything else that I think is out?
I think it's everything you've said, Mads, and absolutely is Mark says that adding value is that's what we're trying to do in having these processes. And it's assuring council of governments that we have a process for a process for all individuals. The one thing I did say is I have done it very slightly differently for those who have done more than a year. I've done really full term for those people such as the associates, Precious and Ganesh, who are stepping up. We obviously did a piece of work around appointing them, and then for those people who have done shorter terms, Sarah is obviously just joining. We'll obviously be very much looking at future objectives and the so I haven't just by rote gone through the process. I felt to against that area I'm trying to form it so that it can bring value for each individual and different circumstances.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to actually hear of the program, for example, the Aspiring Chairs program, which I didn't realise existed, but actually would be a very good thing for new neds. And obviously, it's also very interesting to see that everything is being looked at in terms of what can we do to make the neds function in the way that they should do in order to assist us and the council of governors, and what is missing, what can be done better, what can be done the same, that may be useful.
Yeah. It's all part of the conversation that we're all having at home is about becoming the very performing. It's working a little bit when it's in vision leadership, but Catherine's working with executives and she's working with myself and we're working as a team about moving ourselves forward. Just to be able to have a team, you have to understand each other and know each other and develop together. Yeah, we've started that work and it will continue through this year. Thank you. So I think I'm going to say myself, is that very acceptable?
You can find yourself a cup of tea. It's just one for
Just the chair recruitment updates.
yeah, this is just an update.
It's just
Yes.
on how we've done.
Yeah, it's timelines and updates, and Kate is online. So in terms of the appointment of the chair, I understand that the advert has gone out, which closes. It had gone out by the time we met, and this closes on the 13th of February, and the interviews lined up for the 19th of March. We had insight into what the advert says, the job description, and all that information, and we're quite happy with that. So, Kate, was there anything else you wanted to add on top of what I mentioned?
No, I don't think so. I think it's really clearly set out in the paper. So unless anybody has any questions about the process, so hopefully it's set out in a way that is clear and sort of time bound, and people understand the different stages and what happens when.
So does anybody have any questions in terms of the process for the appointment of the chair? Any interviews with the 19th part? Yeah, that's what I've written down, unless I've got that wrong page. Yes, 19th of March. So half days been set aside. So I'm sure quite a few. We have different panels interviewing and from experience. It's a very interesting day with a lot of. By the time we get to the candidates, we have a very good selection. So unless there are any questions, because Andy.
Yeah, am I okay? I mean, you were a bit in and out volume wise then on some of the conversation. Am I okay to ask a question back about Gary?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So if I heard correctly, we weren't able to appoint because we're not quorate.
That's right.
Yeah. Are we able to, say if we think that's, we should approve it, which, absolutely. Are we able to do that instead of getting extra meetings by email and governors replying that way so that it's done expediently?
What, to give an indication?
No, I'm actually asking, can we make a decision?
Oh, no.
You can't do that. Okay.
No. But also, I suppose if we take this offline and this is put for approval, it allows also comments as to what other councillors, other governors feel about his performance, and allows that discussion, which we can't have something here.
Okay, makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, so unfortunately, we may not be able to do the approval outside of the Council of Governors meeting in public because that's the requirements of the NHS Governance Code. However, I think we are in good time to bring this application here. Gary's term, the first term actually ends on the 31st of March. So the early days in April, we have another Council of Governors meeting that we can still represent the application for approval. So maybe a couple of days gap, but then by 23rd, he'll be back.
Okay, yeah, so the plan, it will be in open, in public, that we'll be approving or not approving the appointment. Thanks for sharing. Thank you. Yeah, so shall we bring? Yes, it's to an end.
Any questions on the chair?
I have a question about who appoints the chair. That may be a simple question, but is it the committee who appoints it's not the non-execs committee?
Oh, the chair of what? The
chair of the trust.
Oh,
the position of chair.
The appointments panel. Yes. Yes, which I'll be chairing. That's why I got confused as to which chair and where.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Can I just clarify? Okay, so the process is that the members of the NET Appointment Committee, significantly constituted by the Council of Governors, will make the recommendation. For the chair appointment, it's a bit unique because we need external involvement in it, which includes the NHS regional unit. Claire Panica will be chairing the NET Appointments Committee to interview on the panel. So when this happens, there will be a recommendation from that panel to the NET Appointments Committee. NET Appointments Committee will now make a recommendation like this one to the full council. So it is a full council in public that will appoint or not appoint the chair. So it is still the same full council as a quorum meeting that will appoint the chair.
Thanks for clarifying that, because the last time we did that, it wasn't quite the same. So.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, okay. Thank you.
I stand to be correct. Kate, I hope you're with me. Okay. So I'll get sorry.
The last chair, we definitely constituted and do have the Yeah. Well, those, anyway,
Yes, yes, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So we can move on. I'm just acknowledging that Helen's
using feedback on it, so I'm agree on that.
problem. So Joe very kindly he did his update and Jonathan did financial update, but Joe then updated on the 65 weeks, the east position and the overall position and how we're making steady progress through with such things as the 18 weeks. So I think everyone's happy that they've heard of the update. John, you're not and so the answers doing as well, yes. So now we're definitely all of it. Yeah, so Henry, yes, we will say just a moment. So Henry, I think it was all right, unless there was anything particularly you wanted to add.
Sure, it's very jobs and show that.
Yes. Thank you. So just for those people who've joined, John and Sam, just also, but even with John, they need to transfer. That's 6, 7, 8. Yeah, David and Sam being back in the
This is very candy army.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll carry on and then if they come back to something, I'll back to that and we'll try and take it and improve it if that's possible. It's better to do it. I'm just going to move now to progress against objectives. So I'm going to hand over to Lily, if that's all right, for an update on engagement.
Yeah. Firstly, just to echo what Heidi said when we were meeting about how active funders have been. So that's been really pleasing to see the last couple of months, and not normally kind of the time of year we would expect that between the peaks of the summer, during the summer, we get a lot of events and engagement activities. That's great. And kind of illustrating points as well. Today, Andy and Ansar were at an event in Wolverton supporting our R&D team in the genes and health. Rather than stealing, we haven't had a chance to catch up. And Ansar's back as well. So I don't know if you wanted to give it just a round up of what happened there at Wolverton, Andy or Ansar, or we can catch up later.
Sure, you mean now?
Yeah, why not?
So we had the R&D team in today with Genes on Genes Health, that sort of stuff, at the lunch drop-in. So it's the second one we've done in our lunch drop-ins where we get hundreds of people and they have a stand and they talk to people. So yeah, they had a reasonable response today. We're probably going to add them to the 13th of May where we do a whole day in the building and particularly target the Kashmiri Pakistani community to actually come in on that sector. And we've got tuberculosis next month and bowel cancer the month after that, and etc. So yeah, it's going really well. And people now expect the hospital in the community on the last Wednesday of every month. So no pressure.
And I think, Andy, that's what we were saying at the start of the meeting when Joe and others were updating, but we're talking about the move into neighbourhood, and, the move away, if you like, from acute, or trying to help people so they don't come to acutes. But it's going to be, part of that is going to be using lots of, Christine and I were talking about using some of the already fantastic work that goes on out there, which I think then supports people and perhaps then enables them to understand the best route for them, for their care, for their support. And there are lots of brilliant organisations like King's Community Church that are able to support some of this work. So actually, we were talking about how challenging it might be, the challenging bit being to kind of knit it all together and to get the flow going. But I'm pretty certain myself that it's a part of the future for enabling flow to happen for people in terms of support and information.
Yeah, and finally, I going to be at an event on the 8th of February in Broughton at a health fair event, which is being organised by the Darlington MP. I think there's space for one extra person if they'd like to join me. So just let me know. I've got some further details. We talk online on the 8th of February, Saturday, 1 till 4 p.m.
And so you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. I think Andy summed it up really, but I have been trying to engage with the local mosque to take up some steps towards having these sessions there, awareness sessions. So we're still in that conversation, but I think where Andy is based, it's quite central. So I think we can capture the residents or the community members to come and interact really. So I think just briefly on that. So I have been engaged, but I think going forward, Andy's place is quite suitable as well to have these events.
So certainly, one of the things we did in Zoraida in Peterborough was reached out to the community, and we reached out to more than 35 different community groups, faith groups, and that connectivity and understanding of what was available and what was suitable and appropriate for people in terms of support was transformed by some of those conversations and relationships, and how that really helped things to develop pointing forward. So I think I think if we bring people together, in terms of changing the way of reach out for what they want, and understanding what certain people how they can access it. It's important stuff. Anything else for me there? That's wise. There's lots of stuff going on as always, and people are always welcome to be along with the involved. Super. Thanks very much. I think we're now moving over to Maxine for an update from the government. Thank you, Maxine.
Thank you. I'll take the report as read. At the beginning and end of the report, some highlights from both patient feedback that we received at things over the last few months, as well as comments against some trust board papers that have through volunteers, scouring through on a quarterly basis as well. But I will draw some highlights around the kind of centre of the report, really. I've been, as well as having fun on the Christmas war rounds, I've been here a couple of times over the Christmas period, and I'm afraid that I may have infected half of Europe virus, getting it, taking it on the plane and then spreading it to half Italy. But never mind, it was a fun Christmas. But no, I had some really good conversations with Julie Goodman before Christmas, having connected up through Kate around how we can support with the numbers of complaints and the kind of complaints that are coming through to PALS. We discussed some options around how we could work better with that. I think that progress against that is still quite slow, but recognise it's that kind of time of year where the pressures build up. I think we really need to find that sweet spot where the pressure just dips and we can focus on some of that joint working around those things. I also met with Lisa Antonini. We talked, it was pre-news about the new hospital programme, but we had a nice hopeful discussion about that and looking to the future around how we as a trust could deliver that message around Milton Keynes, as well as had a conversation about how patients and residents could be best involved in having a say about how that service is going to work forward in the future, and had some quite good discussions about how we could use things like co-production recognising that there would be limitations to how the space could be used, and that models like co-production could be really useful because it's a space where really co-design and everybody understands the way the limitations of the space and opportunities within that space. I also met Tony Mock, who is the Health and Wellbeing Coordinator for the Trust. That was more of a private visit. I know Tony from previous work, so I know what an asset she is to people around her, both as a trainer, her skills in mental health first aid. And it was really good to see some of the schemes that she has and how she brings services to the staff. And a couple of my team attended mental health and wellbeing training yesterday as well, which was lovely to be invited to. We're still working on an active project in the integrated discharge hub, talking to patients coming off the pathways, discharge pathways 1 and 2, about their experience. And we're reporting that into a programme board for the NK deal, so that the integrated discharge hub can understand how those patients are experiencing that discharge and feeding into that process. It is based on a QI programme, and I think referring back to Heidi's paper at the beginning of the meeting, I think we would really welcome any meds who would like to perhaps partake in some of those interviews. Whilst most of them are done on the telephone, those on Pathway 2 are generally best delivered in person, and we're doing quite a lot of those. So it's quite useful to see, you know, how that experience is post-discharge when they're in kind of reablement, step down facilities, back at home, and how that is seen there. So we really welcome that. And likewise, it's prior to Christmas, the team came into a number of wards across the trust to observe how staff and patients are supported with interpretation and translation. This is part of our funded work by the ICB for the Denny Review recommendations. The project changed a little bit. I think that was probably due to the time that project was initiated. And there was an expectation which emerged halfway through the year that we'd come in and do a second wave of observational visits. We'd make recommendations on changes. We'd come back in and see how those changes had been implemented. We've pushed back on that, A, because of the time of year, but also because if it's supposed to be based in QI and quality improvement, a month, 2 months is not enough time. And I think we need to do that work in a more planned way. That project will conclude, but on a place base, we will be building that work into our business plan next year because we think it's really important. So we will be picking that up. I believe that my colleague has shared the results of the observations with Kate, and we will pick that up and establish what areas would be particularly useful to look at in terms of perhaps there are some kind of quick wins like better advertising of support on boards and things like that. There might be some longer term projects like awareness raising and training. So we'll pick that up as we move forward. And I think the only other thing to highlight is we also have a community event coming up. Again, part of our funded Denny recommendations work. We did have some funds to put on a couple of health events, and that will be on the 15th of February. The link is in the paper, but I have some posts as well. So please do share the word and feel free to come along today.
Thank you. Lots of good stuff always happening. Are there any questions?
And the timeline report that it was integrated the district nursing referrals.
Yes, sorry, I meant to pick that up when I saw the notes. I couldn't understand what that action was, and I have not done my homework. It didn't ring a bell for some reason. I know it was some time
There's a new
ago.
system where it's the central referral, it's my understanding of it. And I think it's about, well, how well is it working for patients? It's a new thing. I may be too soon to say, but what's the plan, jury, you know?
I apologise, I haven't picked that up. It did skip over my action, so I have noted that, and I will do some digging. Like I said, we still haven't heard any feedback about that specifically, but it might be that patients don't necessarily understand that that's part of the pathway, so we will look into.
But Maxine, I probably should know the answer to, but obviously we get feedback on it. Sheets you've received, and I'm just wondering what the duties for that from yours, getting that information. Does that have a link into? I know you said you talked to Kate about different things, but I just wondered if there's whether you can pick that up at all.
So there's probably a few pathways for that. Here is a space just to highlight anything. So if it flags any themes or areas that it's going to pick up on, and governors want to pick up on within their own communities for information. We do attend the Patient Family Experience Board quarterly basis, so we'll feed that information into there. And obviously, if we see receive a piece of feedback where we feel that there's concern or people want to pick up on that, then we will talk directly to Powers. So in terms of if they want a resolution to that, then obviously we will liaise with Powers for that as well.
I'm just going to find out different things like the community event work that we're doing all the time, and people going to be circling back to fantastic organisations, whether health coach or whether third sector or doing things in the community. I'm sure part of this joining together to support more people and to keep people out of the hospital and looking after themselves. So in many ways, it's both things. It's not into acute, but it's also prevention and the other journeys. So I think all of these things I see it in the future take some time. There's lots of good work going on, lots of great support available. It's about how we bring it together. To ask I'm counting, and I keep counting, and then people keep moving around the screen. I think we are through it as of this moment because we have. Oh, I don't know if all the way just then. I think it's terrible. But we have 5 people on screen, 5 people in governance. So we are forward. So perhaps I would just like to step back and do the fact that what you want whilst we are forward is just to have approval of the reappointment of Jerry as an exec.
Yes. Do I need to do a summary or you okay?
Yes, you've done the summary. I think you just get the nods from the game.
So yeah, okay, so
Okay.
right, so yes, it's up for approval for reappointment. So if we can have a show of hands if we need to, and also on screen. Can you, those who aren't showing their faces on screen, can you indicate?
In the earlier part, yes, John's got John's acknowledging or asking a question. Yes, or yes.
Okay. Oh yes, thank you very much.
So John is going to ask the question. I think it's no, that's fine. Okay, it wasn't. Just waiting. So that is proved. So we've also done a film, but marvellous. That's excellent. Excellent. So on the last part on the agenda here on item 12, inclusion leadership council, we haven't had any inclusion leadership since the last governors. But one thing I wanted to talk about there is that all as part of the work of developing culture of the trust. Something Catherine's been working on with myself and with Joe. Part of that is we are looking at the networks that we have. We have a lot of networks across the trust. Some of them are very, very well attended. We're talking tens of people. I think in the case of the Women's Network, over 100 people on networks, and attendance is usually very good, very strong. But we've actually also got networks. So whilst they exist in them, that don't necessarily had a lot of activity met, or was underway with things. So I think one of the things we want to do is sort of believe if we're going to have networks, if we're going to have activity reporting up through a council, and then having a voice and understanding of what you need to make sure that they are fit for purpose and that they are functioning. And one of the things Catherine's talked about, which I think is really sensible, I think she was meeting with Alice last week from Still Board at the moment. I think we were talking about that. We need to kind of really understand how they know what it is as a network they are influencing and how they do that. So it's not really satisfactory just to have a lot of network members, people join it and they don't join it, and they're not really sure how they are bringing information to both that meeting, but then to the executives and to the NEDs. So one of the things we're really keen on is that we make sure that we've got networks that give purpose, and that we have our Inclusion Leadership Council that really does have access to board and informs, because that's going to be part of our events that are very better culture. And hopefully also will be part of our make sure that we answer some of the challenges that we've known and seen, both with equity, politics and varieties, but also through violence and aggression, which Kate was talking about today. And that's really, really important to us that we make progress on it. And it's not something we want to just keep acknowledging, but we need to kind of understand how to get audience to be part of that full conversation. So that's all I was really going to say there. It's just, I think it's quite a big piece of work this year, and Catherine's definitely kind of understood that and understood why I think it's really important that we make progress. Happy to take any questions from anybody. Just pondering, I can see the ponderings happening.
It's sort of allied, but I was just thinking about representation to governance of staff. And are we still in the position that we don't have a nursing and midwifery representative
On the Council of Governors?
Yeah. We don't, which is a very big staff group, and it seems to me that's it's a real priority just for that to be pursued.
Sorry. I was
just going to say that people have previously understood from sort of attending the meeting once with leader, but one of the barriers to putting oneself forward for things like the groups or the any opportunities is the perception that why us? Why do we need the extra step? Should this all not be by from merit? So I'm hoping that with this report it can be something that helps just get everybody to understand their input, whatever their background, into shaping the inclusion and leadership in the hospital. Because I think one of the comments was some nurses didn't want to take the sort of management step up that had been affected with, for example, people in the vein community, because you're like, well, actually that makes me stand out. I don't want to stand out. I want to be there by merit. Good. So that's yes.
I think it's a broad approach, and to say there's that recently which is great, isn't it? Maybe let's say something about values-based recruitment. And absolutely, we're on this journey. We need to ensure that people know that all processes, all activity, all committees, groups, networks, and opportunities are equitable, and that processes are equitable and fair. I know actually they've done that with, and I think if not last week, but this is a really big piece of work for us as trust. We have very diversity in our community. We have even more diversity across the whole of our ICB. But this is about inclusivity of disabilities, Q+ community, we know we're on the journey to make sure that everyone thinks they can bring their very best self to work and equitable opportunity to achieve their personal goals. And something that want to be able to do that in a different supportive way. So I think it's absolutely right that we're going on this journey and that support that we've got work to do and progress in.
A couple of things. One is you saying about looking at focus of the networks. I'm in 2 or 3 networks, and for most of them, meetings are very sporadic. I can tell you the last time I went to a meeting, and they do different things. So, for example, the Women's Network, most of the conversation on Teams is about a presentation about menopause and that, whereas the Ability Network is much more proactive and people go to them and they help with stuff. So having an idea of what the point of the network is and what they do and how they function is really good. I also think, as you were saying about not having a nurse and midwifery governor, I think it's a lot harder for clinical staff to be involved in things like that because they don't have time. And whenever I have attended network meetings or anything like that, there's very, very rarely any clinical staff there because they can't attend them. They can't come away from their role. So that needs to be looked at, how to persuade those clinics to be involved in things like that. There's a lot of the time they just can't.
I'm really glad you raised those 2 things because the second one about time springs already talked about it. Joe and I talked about it, Kate and I talked about it, and it was a really key part of how we make sure those things are authentic and people, if they want to be part of it, can be part of it and have the time to. I think there's a separate matter around sharing and those about how you have that time to be able to do that. But I'm actually glad you raised the 2 networks that you talked about because I meet a few of the women's networks just timing wise, and I felt quite positive about the work they're doing. So I was worried what you were going to say was, well, don't try to be over controlling of what the networks do. But actually, I think that's really positive. You say that you think that some are being more deliberately active and proactive about things. Because I think that's exactly the point that we've been discussing over the last couple of months, is that we need to kind of make sure that they are delivering as much as they have the potential and the people supporting them to be able to deliver. So that's really helpful.
I also think, despite all the advertising and everything that we do in terms of governors and networks, a lot of people still don't know that they exist. I'm constantly saying, join this network, join this network, join this network. Because I think, again, the clinical staff, they don't have the time to go on Teams and email and stuff like that. So finding other ways to let them know about stuff.
Yes.
I think just from my own experience in my own organisation, I'm thinking I'm just following from both points that you made. We have a very active ED&I group, which is probably about a quarter of the organisation, just over 80, so probably about a quarter of different times continually. But it goes through fits and starts, and unless there is a certainty, so when something comes up, the obvious thing is an ED&I group put that and make some suggestions. But then when something doesn't come, it kind of meets their own kind of what to do. So I think direction and guidance, particularly if you've got a number of constituencies, what's a successful network look like? How does it operate? What does it seek to do? Because there's nobody for you kind of sharing information to actually be privacy. So maybe some sort of overall support to that. And then if you want political representation, you probably need to get to join that and reform agreements that you take time to attend these groups, otherwise it's not yeah, so it's probably some real sort of thought plan we want to increase representation.
That's why I'm really supportive of a approach that says we make sure that we're not criticising the networks at all, but the way it's structured, how it's doing, how we're engaging, letting people know we need to be into this. So I think it will help. Don't have a shit.
Yes, I so much. Good one. I'm sorry, did you have?
Fran had a hand up first, that's my fault. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, what ideally does or what do people think that the success, so to speak, and delivering is for the networks, and how does the council, the inclusion council, affect that, or add to it?
Well, so I don't want to kick the answer sort of down the road. But I think that's exactly what the conversation's been for the last 6 weeks, and we've wanted Catherine to arrive and clearly be part of shaping and forming this. Because I think we need to have a really clear, consistent approach to Emma's point, and we also need to be very clear about how the networks feed in, how it's responded to, and where that message gets to all the governors, the influence, the leaders of the trust, about what people are experiencing, thinking about it, considering. So I think it's just very great. We need to get this work in a better way than it does today. Not that some of the groups aren't doing some fantastic things, because they are, but that's part of this.
I just want to see you go bring in the conversation about when all of us feel it's appropriate to share work.
Yes, so we're waiting for, I think Joe, where were we today? We were on town hall over today. Gosh, how we gave close up. And that question was asked. We're actually waiting for Yvonne's report. And so if I that saying here, I think that we are a little bit, we are waiting for the report, and he's coming to us later than we had anticipated. Joe might want to qualify. You see, Joe.
Yes, very happy to come in there if helpful. So we contacted Yvonne only 10 days or so ago, just check and see where things were, and she has said that she will definitely get it to us by the end of February. So we have been chasing. We are completely reliant on her, unfortunately, at this stage. So we'll get it out as soon as we possibly can.
But that will be an actual set of front sheet proposals that are implemented.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Want to keep the momentum going.
And that's, yeah,
Right.
I think that's
Striking
the momentum now is and to build forward with it. And that's certainly what Joe and I were talking about. And certainly it's what the execs are talking about. So yeah, and I do know that he was in a week ago when we worked as a committee in with Catherine talking about this as well. So it starts to build as we tip forward now. Anything else from anyone? Good, lovely. Okay, is there any other business from anyone? If anything, rather than deliberately go around. Governance questions. The only ones I'm aware of are the ones that came in from Paul, which Paul's not here, but we're going to publish those and then answer them in written form. A couple of them will be centred around questions which we've answered before about things like a deficit and what do we do in order to be efficient to make sure we have safe, effective service. So some of you as governments will have heard back those questions before and some of the responses, but we will formally respond to those in writing, and then at the next governance meeting, hopefully Paul will be with us. I'll be happy to talk those through as well in terms of acknowledging them personally. I don't think there are any questions from government. Just in previous questions and the responses in case anybody didn't, they are already attached to the and we've got to keep this going forward. All the questions answered for that all the council of governors will now be answered to the council of governors. But I think we've got a slightly smoother process now going in. It's good. And we've got the forward agenda planner. I don't know if there's anybody wants to make any comments. My system's decided to close just as I get to that. If there's anything anybody wants to make on tool about the agenda planner. We have been going through for agenda and for all our things, just really kind of looking at what we've got and well. If it does one ends today, so day was, yeah. Will we be published? Yes, we need to publish a new one. I think that would be quite good, isn't it?
Well, so do that. Well done, thanks. Well, good, very good.
Yeah, so if we publish a new one, we'll do that before the next meeting. We could do that the next month without the consent with it. Then you get the opportunity to look at it prior to that. Lovely. Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you for this attending. Thanks to those guys online and thank you for good meetings and good discussions. Look forward to seeing you. What time is the one?
April.
April. I'm also saying.
Thank you. 23rd of April is the next council of legislation.
Just after this week. Yeah.
However, we have an open forum in March. Yes.
Yes. The 23rd, that must just be on Easter. It's Easter.
Yeah.